We don't think he should be here today. My mother told me on Christmas morning, right in front of my 12-year-old son, Ethan, as he stood there holding a carefully wrapped gift for her. She didn't even let him step inside. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just acted. 30 minutes later, chaos and shouting erupted inside her perfect holiday party. But let's rewind for just a moment, back to when I was standing under a strand of twinkling gold garland, glancing at the driveway for the 6th time in 10 minutes, trying to keep my hands from shaking. The sky was the color of wet concrete, the kind that seemed to press down on you. My breath curled into thin ghosts in the cold air as I shifted the gift bag in my hands. Beside me, Ethan, my 12-year-old, bounced his knees to keep warm, his red scarf pulled up to his nose. He was holding his gift, wrapped in crisp red paper, tied with gold ribbon, the edges a little crooked because he'd insisted on doing it himself. We'd been standing on the porch for maybe a minute, maybe more. It felt longer. Inside, faint Christmas music floated through the door, muffled laughter bleeding into the December air. I imagined the smell, cinnamon, roast turkey, Margaret's cranberry sauce, things I'd known my entire life. Then the door opened. My mother, Margaret, stood there, dressed in her best holiday cardigan, the one with tiny stitched poinsettias. She glanced at me, then let her eyes drift down to Ethan. It was quick. A glance. A pause. A subtle tightening of her jaw before she said, evenly, like announcing the weather, "We don't think he should be here today." For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. The sentence just hung there in the cold between us. Ethan's head dropped. He stared at the welcome mat, the little snowman stitched into the corner. His hands tightened around the gift bag until the paper crinkled. My throat went dry. A dozen responses flared in my head, questions, protests, maybe even a shout. But none of them made it past my lips. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just acted. I reached out, touched Ethan's shoulder, and turned us both away from the doorway. Behind us, I heard the door click shut, the muffled carols resuming as if nothing had happened. 30 minutes later, their world wasn't filled with carols anymore. It was filled with shouting. The kind of panicked voices you hear when something goes very, very wrong. But before we get there, let's go back to the moment it all started. The snow was still clinging to my boots when I stepped into my parents' house. The air inside was warm, almost too warm, and thick with the scent of cinnamon sticks, gingerbread, and that particular brand of potpourri my mother swore made a home festive. Strings of gold ribbon draped along the banister, the tree in the corner overloaded with ornaments, every light twinkling like it had something to prove. I'd come early, as I always did, to help. I hung my coat in the hallway and moved toward the kitchen, where the center of the operation was already in motion. Colin, my older brother, was leaning against the counter, swirling a glass of something dark and expensive-looking while telling my father, loud enough for the entire room to hear, about the new contract his firm had just landed. His voice had that triumphant, watch me shine edge to it. Sophie, my younger sister, was perched on a stool, chatting animatedly with Margaret, both of them laughing in the way people do when they've been in on the same joke for years. Through the window above the sink, I could see Ethan in the yard, his breath clouding the glass as he crouched in the snow, holding the gift bag in both hands like it was something fragile. Every few seconds, he'd shake the snow from the top of it, checking the ribbon like it might come loose on its own. I found a moment between Margaret's instructions to Sophie. No, the cranberry sauce needs to be angled next to the turkey, to speak up. Ethan's excited to see you. He even made the gift himself. Margaret's hands paused midair over a row of tea lights. She didn't look at me right away. When she did, it was with that polite, press-lip smile she used on strangers at the grocery store. About that, she said, her voice just above the hum of kitchen chatter. We're keeping it just family today. The words didn't hit me all at once. They trickled in, cold and slow, like water seeping under a door. My brow tightened. He is family. Margaret exhaled through her nose, finally lowering her hands to the counter. She leaned in just slightly, enough so I could hear every syllable. Not in the same way. He's different. The clatter of plates, The sound of Colin's booming laugh, Sophie's chatter. None of it could mask the weight of those words. Something in my chest tightened, sharp and hot. For a second, I thought about arguing, about asking her to explain what different meant. But I'd grown up knowing that explanations from my mother only led to more hurt, not clarity. So I swallowed the heat rising in my throat, turned toward the window, and caught Ethan looking in, half smiling, hopeful, completely unaware of the conversation he was one sentence away from overhearing. I lifted my hand and motioned for him to come. He straightened immediately, brushing snow from his sleeves before jogging toward the door. No one in the room stopped me. Not my mother. Not Colin, who was now bragging about his holiday bonus. Not Sophie, still laughing at something Margaret had just whispered. Their silence wasn't just agreement, it was permission. And that was when I knew, whatever happened next, I wouldn't forget this moment. The cold didn't just touch us when the door shut behind. It wrapped around us like a punishment. The sudden silence outside was different from the muffled noise inside. It was sharp, cutting, the kind that makes you hear your own breathing. I took Ethan's hand, his fingers small but cold, and guided him down the walkway. Our boots pressed into the snow, making that hollow crunch with every step. The warm yellow glow from the windows fell across the driveway, framing the house like something perfect in a picture book, but I knew better. Beauty from the outside meant nothing if it rotted inside. Ethan didn't speak as we reached the car. I opened the passenger door for him, and he slid in slowly, careful not to bump the gift bag against anything. He didn't even look at me. His gaze stayed fixed on the ribbon, twisting it between his fingers again and again until it started to fray. It was only after I buckled in, my hands still gripping the steering wheel, that I heard it, his voice, small and careful. Did I do something wrong? I felt the words like a physical blow, somewhere deep in my chest. I turned to him. His head was still bent, shoulders curled forward, the way kids shrink themselves when they're not sure they belong in a room. I shook my head slowly. No, I said, my voice low, steady. They did. He nodded once, but he didn't relax. He just held that gift tighter, like maybe if he kept it safe, this day could still be saved somehow. I started the car. The heater coughed awake, filling the cabin with a faint smell of old fabric and warm air. Snow crunched under the tires as I backed out, and I didn't bother looking in the rearview mirror. That house, those people had already taken enough of our attention. We drove in silence, the streets lined with bare trees strung in white lights, the glow blurring through the car windows. After a few minutes, I spotted the familiar warm light of a small cafe on the corner. The windows were fogged from the inside, the glass etched with little snowflakes that caught the street lamp glow. A chalkboard sign out front announced holiday specials, hot chocolate, $3. Inside, it was warm in a way that wasn't just temperature, it was safe. The air smelled like cocoa powder, toasted marshmallows, and cinnamon sugar. A couple sat by the window, sharing a muffin. Someone laughed softly from behind the counter. I led Ethan to a corner table with two mismatched chairs, one a little shorter than the other. He sank into the taller one, setting the gift bag gently beside him like it was a living thing. I ordered 2 hot chocolates, extra whipped cream for him, no marshmallows for me. When they arrived, the steam curled between us, softening the air. Ethan wrapped his hands around his mug, letting the heat soak into his fingers. I pulled my phone from my coat pocket, the screen lighting my face. My fingers didn't hesitate. Rachel, the friend who'd been accidentally left out of last year's reunion invite. Aunt Helen, who hadn't been welcome since she refused to take sides in a family argument. Mr. Harris, our old neighbor, who'd stopped being acceptable company after he told my father he'd broken a fence agreement. Each message was short but deliberate. Christmas at my place tonight. 7 p.m. No formalities, no rules. Just bring yourself. I felt Ethan watching me as I typed. His eyes were cautious, curious. What are you doing? He asked. I met his gaze. Making plans, I said. Better ones. For the first time since we'd left, something in his face shifted. Not quite a smile, but the tightness in his jaw eased. His shoulders lowered just a fraction, as if setting down a heavy bag no one else could see. In my mind, I could already picture it. Warm lights, the smell of real food cooking, the sound of laughter that didn't come at someone else's expense. A Christmas where every person in the room knew they belonged. By night, I promised myself we wouldn't be thinking about the house we'd just walked away from. Ethan sat across from me in the cafe, cradling his mug like it might vanish if he loosened his grip. Outside, snow fell in slow, lazy spirals, settling on the sidewalk in a thin, uneven layer. Watching him there, quiet, careful, too aware for his age, pulled me somewhere I didn't want to go but couldn't stop myself from visiting. I was always the middle one. Not old enough to be trusted. Not young enough to be adored. Somewhere in between, present, but never the point. On Colin's 10th birthday, the living room was strung with banners, balloons in his favorite team's colors bouncing against the ceiling. He got a cake shaped like a football stadium, complete with little plastic players. Everyone cheered when he blew out the candles. For Sophie's 7th, there were glitter-covered invitations, a bakery cake with a princess gown piped in pink icing. She wore a tiara the whole day and went to bed with it still on her head. When I turned 9, they brought home a grocery store cake, plain white frosting, plastic flowers pressed in one corner. My name wasn't even spelled right. Orion, the little card read in messy blue icing. When I pointed it out, Margaret didn't look up from the knife she was wiping. "It's just cake, Lauren. Don't be difficult." It was never just about the cake. I was 12 when it happened for the first time, being left out without warning. We'd been talking about going to Lakeshore Amusement Park for weeks. I woke up that Saturday to an empty house. At first, I thought they'd gone for groceries. Then I saw the note on the counter. "Back later. Didn't think this was your kind of thing." That night, Ruth, before she became Sophie the baby, let it slip. They'd all gone. Even my grandparents. I'd spent the day reading on the porch, telling myself it wasn't a big deal, while they rode roller coasters and ate cotton candy without me. Years later, I met Adam. He worked with his hands, furniture, cabinetry, anything that came from raw wood. There was a steadiness to him, a quiet patience that felt like safety after years of being overlooked. My parents didn't see safety. They saw a man without a college degree. They saw a family background that didn't match ours. At dinner one night, my father asked bluntly, "Where's his family?" "He grew up in foster care," I said. Margaret tilted her head, her voice tinged with that faux sympathy she used when she was actually suspicious. "That's so sad." Sad, to them, meant untrustworthy. Not our kind. When Ethan was born, I thought maybe things would shift. He had Adam's big brown eyes, his quiet way of observing the world before stepping into it. As a baby, he didn't cry much, didn't demand, just watched thoughtful. My parents kept their distance. The other grandchildren got personalized gifts, embroidered blankets, custom-made toys. Ethan got store-bought puzzles still in the shopping bag, price tags dangling from the corners. One Christmas, all the grandkids received ornaments with their names carved into them, except Ethan. His was a generic sphere with the word joy printed on it. Margaret actually said, "We weren't sure what he's into." He was 4. What he was into was grilled cheese and dinosaur stickers. But they never asked. I tried, to bridge the gap. I invited them to his school plays. I sent photos, called to share little stories about his day. The responses were polite, flat, the kind of tone you use when someone's talking about the weather. And then Colin had kids. That was the end of even pretending. Every ounce of attention, every gesture of pride, every grandparent moment I had wished Ethan would get, it all went straight to Colin's children. I remember one Thanksgiving, Ethan handed my mother a drawing he'd made, a picture of the whole family, smiling, holding hands. She glanced at it, said, "That's nice," and set it aside without another word so she could take out a set of photos Colin had sent from his latest trip to Disney with his kids. In the cafe, I realized my hands had tightened around my own mug the same way Ethan was holding his. That same silent grip. That same instinct to hold on to what little warmth you can. Only now, I wasn't going to just hold on. I was going to change the whole damn room. By the time the clock hit 7, Rachel's living room had transformed. The plain beige walls now glowed gold from the strands of fairy lights we'd looped around the windows. The coffee table was covered in plates of gingerbread cookies, still warm, their sugary scent mingling with the faint pine from a small, slightly crooked Christmas tree Rachel had dragged out of her attic. A playlist of soft holiday jazz played low in the background. No overproduced carols, no fake cheer. Just warmth. The kind you could breathe in. Ethan sat cross-legged on the rug, showing Aunt Helen a snowman ornament he'd made in art class. He was smiling, really smiling for the first time that day, his cheeks flushed from the cocoa and the heat of the fire. Across the room, Mr. Harris was telling Rachel's youngest about the year the lake froze solid, his hands gesturing wildly. People laughed without looking over their shoulders. No one here had to measure their joy. I was refilling the cider pitcher when my phone buzzed on the counter. Sophie. It's chaos. Here. The oven broke. Dad's yelling. Colin's slideshow crashed. I stared at the screen for a second, the words blooming slow satisfaction in my chest. I'd seen that oven. Old, stubborn, always needing coaxing to keep the temperature right. And Colin's slideshow. I could almost picture him standing there, frozen frame on the big screen, his perfect performance crumbling. Before I could type a reply, another buzz. This time, Cousin Marla. People are leaving. Your mom is trying to explain why you left. It's awkward. I imagined Margaret, standing at the center of her carefully curated evening, grasping for a narrative that made her look blameless. She'd probably smoothed the tablecloth, adjusted the candles, all while insisting it was just a misunderstanding. I felt my lips curve, just a little. Not a gloating smile, but the kind you give yourself when you finally see the balance shift. I typed back one word to Sophie. Good. Around me, the conversation swelled, Helen telling a story that made Ethan laugh so hard he nearly spilled his drink. Rachel was setting down another plate of cookies. Mr. Harris had started humming along to the music. And I realized this wasn't just a backup Christmas. This was Christmas. The kind where no one checked a guest list before letting you in. In that moment, the noise from my parents' house felt like it was happening in another world entirely. And for the first time in years, I didn't want to cross back over. The next morning, the knock on my door was sharp, impatient, the kind that says we're not here to wait. Through the peephole, I saw them. Margaret in her winter coat buttoned all the way up, scarf perfectly knotted, face set like porcelain, Colin standing slightly behind her, hands in his pockets, jaw tight. I opened the door just enough to lean against it. Margaret wasted no time. You embarrassed us in front of the entire family. Her tone wasn't shouting, but it was edged, polished steel. I held her gaze. You did that the moment you turned Ethan away. Her lips pressed thin, the first crack in that controlled expression. Colin stepped forward, his voice dripping with that false calm he used in business meetings. He's just a kid, Lauren. He'll forget. Before I could answer, footsteps came from the hallway. Ethan appeared in the doorway to his room, hair still messy from sleep, but his eyes clear. He looked at Colin, then at Margaret. I won't. The words landed heavy, the kind that doesn't need volume to have weight. Margaret's shoulders twitched. Just a fraction, but enough to show she'd heard it. Silence stretched between us, thick and unmoving. I could hear the hum of the heater, the faint ticking of the clock in the kitchen. Margaret's voice softened suddenly, the edges smoothed over. Lauren, maybe we should talk. We can put this behind us. For Ethan's sake. I almost laughed at the turn, how quickly the accusation became persuasion when the first tactic failed. I shook my head slowly. We're done talking. And before she could say another word, I stepped back, let the door swing forward, and closed it with a quiet, deliberate click. On the other side, their muffled voices rose. Colin saying something low, Margaret's tone tightening again, but I didn't catch the words. I didn't need to. Ethan was still standing there. I met his eyes. He didn't smile, but there was a certain light in his face, a relief that said more than words could. For the first time in years, I felt that same relief too. 1 year later. It was January, the sky a dull gray, streaks of snow still clinging to the edges of the street. I was reorganizing the wooden shelves in my workshop when a knock came at the door, this time not urgent, but slow and hesitant. When I opened it, Colin and Margaret stood there. Colin looked thinner, dark circles etched beneath his eyes. Margaret wore an old winter coat, a knitted hat pulled low, her hands clasped together. Colin cleared his throat, avoiding my gaze. We're in trouble. Mom and Dad have been overspending. The debt's piling up. Lauren, if you could help. Margaret cut in, her voice carrying a faint tremor. We'll change. We'll make things right with you and Ethan. Just help us this one time. I stood still for a few seconds, letting their words pass over me. Inside, Ethan was sitting on the couch, reading under the soft glow of a lamp, his hair a little messy. I walked in, sat down next to him, and took his hand. Turning back toward the door, I spoke clearly, without raising my voice. I already have a family, and he's right here. Ethan squeezed my hand gently. I closed the door, not needing to hear the sound of their footsteps leaving. If this story touched you, if you believe every child deserves to feel wanted and loved, please subscribe, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters more than you know. They once said he shouldn't come. Now, they have nowhere left to go.